Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. There may have been restrictions on the gathering of persons during the Ganpati and during the Navratri festival, but that did not stop the movement of people and cargo and the resumption of economic activity in India. All modes of public transport, whether it be local trains, metro trains, or buses, they all go packed, unmindful of a potential third corona wave hitting India. Fed up with the pandemic and concerned about his depleting income and savings, the common man, whether he be employed or unemployed, has no choice but to be on the go, and that we see in all the local transport. A Google tracker says that there were more people visiting retail and recreation spots last week than at any point since the March 2020 lockdown. Retail and recreation visits hit 90.7% of the pre-COVID levels as per the mobility data from the search engine Google. It further says that workplace visits have shot up and have touched 92.1% of the pre-COVID times, all indicating that there has been a resumption of economic activity. To us, there is no choice but to do that. Growth has also moved higher for the Indian railways in terms of both goods carried and the revenue earned by the railways. The quantity of goods carried by the railways was thus up by 10.1% for the latest week as compared to the same period last year when the economy had opened up after the first draconian lockdown that was imposed in March 2020. This increase in movement of passengers and goods as an indicator of a pickup in economic activity coincides with the Finance Ministry's just released monthly economic review for September 2021. As expected, it is a bullish report which predicts that the Indian economy is now on a path of a swift recovery. Let us see the highlights of this report released by the Finance Ministry. The monthly review of the Finance Ministry says that strategic reforms and the rapid vaccination drive have placed India on the path of a swift recovery by enabling the economy to what it calls navigate the ravaging waves of the COVID pandemic. It then says that a sustained and robust growth in agriculture, a sharp rebound in manufacturing and industry, the resumption of services activity, and buoyant revenues of the company suggest that the economy is progressing well. According to this report of the Finance Ministry, India is very well placed on the path to a swift recovery with growth impulses very visibly transmitted to all sectors of the economy. Mind you, it says to all sectors of the economy. The external sector continues to offer bright prospects to India's growth revival as the country's merchandise exports cross $30 billion for the sixth consecutive month in the current financial year, which the report thinks is of course a good indicator. It further says that there is clear evidence of consumption and investment demand also picking up in India, and that the external debt to GDP level remains comfortable, declining to 20.2% of GDP at the end of June 2021. Instead of an increase in India's external debt position, it says there has been a deceleration, it has gone down. Comfortable levels of systemic liquidity and softening of inflationary pressures have also lent stability to the G-Sec yields in the September 2021 time. According to the report, inflationary tendencies are pandemic-induced and they are transitory. This is a bit in contradiction to what we are seeing of the inflation trajectory at the moment. The report finally says that the latest trends in high-frequency indicators in August and September further indicate a broad-based recovery, evidence in sustained improvement in power consumption, improvement in rail freight activity, in e-way bills, robust GST collections, highway toll collections, which have posted a 21-month high, and sequential uptick in air freight and passenger traffic. And of course, it mentions that there has been a quantum leap in digital transactions in India, showing a large pickup in economic activity. The September monthly economic survey, however, does say that volatile prices in the international crude oil markets and upward bound prices of edible oils and metal products in the international markets may continue to pose concerns to growth revival in the country. So there is certainly a subdued note of caution. The other report, which coincides with that of the Finance Ministry, comes from the CMIE. The CMIE, in its report, while noting the optimism in the air, however, puts in a more realistic note, a note which has got a more caution in it. The CMIE report says that recent data suggest that the economy is reviving. Tax collections, foreign trade, and electricity generation have all been convincingly and consistently buoyant so far in this fiscal year, according to it. It says that employment conditions and consumer sentiment have improved dramatically in September 2021. It then says that the growth in the macroeconomic indicators seems to be in harmony with the direction in which the mood of the Indian households is veering. Something seems to be working for the Indian consumer, says the CMIE. It doesn't say what, but it says that something seems to be working and there is certain optimism. Yet, the Indian consumer, it says, has been expressing some caution this festival season also. The CMIE says that the index of consumer sentiment has improved largely because the current economic conditions of households have improved and not so much because of expectations of its improvement in future. It is only when the consumer is confident about his future that his discretionary spending begins in a big way and the economy then really takes off. The larger contribution of current contributions towards the improvement in the consumer sentiment index is thus more real, more because of current conditions than because of anticipated and anticipatory feelings. However, any expectations of this translating into better household incomes are still muted, according to the CMIE, and that is where we think it is realistic. There is only a small increase in the intention to buy consumer durables or other discretionary or capital items, which it very pertinently points out. The CMI then says that the present progression or trajectory in the economy is that first, there was an improvement in households reporting an increase in their incomes. And then there was an increase in households expecting the economy to improve in the short to medium term. The expectation is about the short and medium term, not yet about the long term. The CMI therefore says that this growth progression could remain incomplete since there is no increase yet in the expectations of an increase in household income or enthusiasm for purchasing consumer durables, which shows that they have started having confidence about their long-term improvement in their economic position. There is optimism in the air according to the CMIE, but there is some hesitancy too. To us, the bullishness in the government's report is more political than economic, and that can be misleading if the challenges to growth are ignored. The Financial Express, in its recent editorial, rightly says that recovery is taking off, but headwinds do remain. It says in its balanced and grounded opinion that the recovery is clearly gaining steam, though not all metrics may be showing the same momentum, and that contradicts with what the government claims that there is growth taking place in all sectors. The FE says that worryingly, the services sector, the contact-intensive sector, continues to lag the rest of the Indian economy, and that is a big GDP generator. It then points out that increase in rural wages has been moderating, showing a slowdown in the demand for rural labor and indicating a rising unemployment in the rural sector, which has not been there so far. It rightly notes that led by a sharp 2.49% increase in rural joblessness, India's unemployment rate has shot up to a high of 8.86 as reported by the CMIE and now noted by the Financial Express in its editorial. The FE then says that demand will be adversely affected due to a sharp increase in farm costs, which are hurting agricultural income. The point to then ponder is that The Reserve Bank's rather subdued GDP growth forecast of 7.8% for the financial year 2023 on the back of its forecast of 9.5% in the current year very clearly suggests that we might be missing something, which is obviously missing in the government's own monthly review for September 2021. The government's review tends to be on the bullish side, tends to be indicating that swift recovery will continue, but that ignores the headwinds that the FE has been pointing out. The Financial Express therefore warns that what could spoil the party for India are the elevated crude oil prices that will feed into local inflation, pushing up the prices of goods and services as companies will pass on the increase in cost to the consumers. Further, if the power outages continue, it will hit industrial production and exacerbate shortages of inputs in India that will also spoil the party. Interest rates are rising, and the worst blow could come from a fresh rise in COVID cases in India. In case India sees a third wave, which proves to be as devastating as the second wave was, which is not what the expectation is, then of course the economy will take a big hit again. The fact that despite the buoyancy in India's economy last month, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and Standard & Poor have kept their growth forecast for India's economy unchanged. And Fitch has actually lowered its growth forecast from its earlier 10% to 8.7% now, only shows that it is too early to conclude that a swift recovery has set in, as the finance minister would like us to believe. A recovery is taking place, but whether a swift one has set in is the bone of contention, is the key issue here. It is certainly good to see a pickup in growth, but it would be better if it sustains for the rest of the current year. And it would, of course, be the best if it continues beyond the current year for the years to come, which is what the Indian economy needs. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.